Welcome to Everything's Not Black and White with your hosts, Lala and Brian.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. So, have you ever looked at someone's career and thought, wow, they really have made it? Only to discover they're asking the same questions about purpose and fulfillment that many of us ask ourselves. Well, today's guest, Tami Chapek, spent nearly 25 years building a successful corporate career before deciding to redefine leadership on her own terms. Today, through her company, We Inspire We, she helps leaders break through limiting beliefs, lead authentically, and create greater impact in their work and lives. We are so excited to learn from her journey and her insights. So please join me in welcoming Tami to the ENBW podcast. Hey, girl, hey!
Hey, it's so good to be here.
Oh my gosh, we are so excited to have you here and to bring all your breadth and knowledge to our listeners. So super glad you're here. So thank you for saying yes in a world where a lot of people say no. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited to be here.
We're so excited. So let's jump right in this conversation, girl. So let's get into your origin story a little bit, right? You spent nearly 25 years in that corporate world, right? So marketing, advertising, healthcare brands like J&J, Edwards Life Sciences, and Genentech. From the outside, that looks like a very successful career. What did that look like for you from the inside?
That's so interesting because I think early on I felt like it was a very successful career. I was checking off the things on the list and my title kept moving up and my salary kept moving up and the things that you look for. But I really felt dissatisfied and burnt out and fatigued and just less happy than I wanted to be, and asked myself the question several times over a couple of years of, is this all that my life is this what my life is going to look like? Is this what I want my life to look like? And through that realization that the, the answer was no to all the above, I really had to then figure out what to do differently. So I think, on paper, and my own personal goals, a lot of that was really moving forward, but it wasn't laddering up to the satisfaction that I wanted to have in my life.
And I love that you said on paper because, I think about, and I'm a Gen Xer and I don't want to put you in my same age bracket, but I'm a Gen Xer, right? Which I lovingly call the Jan Bradys of the Brady Bunch. It's like Marsha. But there's a piece of us that we were told from our parents who, my parents are boomers, and they're like, get a good job, stay for 40 years, do this thing. And so that was kind of the knowledge that I came into it. And so when I got to my first job and there was a quote unquote downside / layoff / restructuring, I'm like, what does this mean for me? So it just kind of honestly threw me off. And so I think about that as an Xer, but then I look at what these young millennials and Gen Zs are going through, and like the on paper is not meeting expectations of what we were told is going to be a great corporate career. Did you feel that same kind of kind of guidance and kind of shocking realization?
Yes, I'm a Gen Xer as well, so I fit right into that same bucket as you. And I feel like my parents didn't go to college. So my sister and I were the first two in our family to go, and there was just this assumption, whether it was put on us or we adapted it on our own, that we would just go down this path and be highly successful individuals. And my younger brother's the same way. We just got on this trajectory, and a lot of it was that, like, what does society think success looks like? Because I didn't take the time to think about what success meant for me. It just was like, these are the things I need to do to prove that I can do it. And I proved that I could do it, but it didn't result in what I wanted to feel inside.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because, what people say success is doesn't necessarily feel like that inside, right? You don't feel that fulfillment that people say you're supposed to do. And so I'm really curious if you can even think back to the moment where it was just like, or maybe it's an accumulation of moments where you said, ooh, something's got to change because I am not feeling this anymore.
I have two moments, but obviously the last one was the most significant. But the first one was, I was in my mid-20s and I got promoted into my first leadership role. And in full transparency, I was a really bad boss. I didn't change anything about my behaviors other than expecting people to act just like me. I thought if I was doing it right, everyone should do it exactly how I do it. And I kind of fell flat on my face. And that was a moment where I had to kind of ask myself, like, do I want to stay on this path or what do I want to do differently? So that was kind of one maybe seed planted for something different that I wanted or needed in my life. And then the second came many, many, many years later. I had moved into, I was still in the advertising world, and I had moved into kind of a hybrid role between strategy, management, and business development. And I honestly was not set up for success. My boss just didn't do the things that I needed to be successful. And it left me in a place of really like huge burnout, huge fatigue, huge dissatisfaction in what I was doing, and just, really caused me to ask those questions like, is this what I want for my life? And at that point, I actually worked with a coach myself and had a moment of like, what do I do? This isn't it. I need something needs to change. I just don't know what to do to move myself forward, and had some huge awakenings from that experience.
Yeah, I love that story so much. For us, Tammy, you said you and your sister were the first people to go to college for in your family. For me, it was my mom. And so there was so much I would call trial and error that happened in that. And, what was defined as I'm a leader and this is what leadership looks like versus who you actually were,
Mhm.
sometimes it's not the same thing. I remember
Mhm.
being very much, I'm a very jovial person, as you know, because you and I have a lovely time to work together. I'm very open and I love people and I'm doing these things. And I was told so many times that I didn't have executive presence because I smiled too
Yeah.
much and I was too jovial. And so I'm like, how do you have to be mean to be a leader? I mean, like, what is this? And so, which really understanding like what true leadership looks like and feels like is, I feel like such an anomaly. So, when you think about how you were designed to be a leader, like how did you learn to be a leader? Like, what kind of examples did you follow to be a leader?
Yeah. I, I had a lot of trial and error moments, and probably a lot of just bad boss moments that I didn't never intended, but because I just started emulating behavior of bosses above me. And I was working in advertising, very male driven at the top, right? So I took on a lot of aggressive, assertive behaviors and tones. I got dinged for that because I'm a woman. I can't be aggressive or assertive because those means other things, right? But then, well, I wasn't laddering up to what they wanted to see. So it was just this huge, like, challenge to be, how can I be myself? How can I bring the best version of myself into my leadership and still meet the criteria of what the organization is looking for? And it took me a long time to figure it out. And I, honestly, I don't know if I walked out with all of it mastered, but I feel like I know a lot more now than I did then. But I think the biggest challenge is, when we grew up, boomers grew up, Gen Xers grew up, it was just do what I do, say what I say, follow my lead, model those behaviors. And the big breakdown or challenge in that is that we're not the same people. We have different strengths and values and gifts to bring to the table. And if you're trying to act like I was trying to act like my male boss, well, I'm not male. So those mannerisms actually worked against me versus leaning into what does work for me, which is building relationships and listening and being collaborative in nature and all those things. So long answer to your question, but I really had to shift my definition of what good looks like so that I could succeed and not fight against this, uphill battle, if you will.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about that specifically because one of the things, even this week I was at a training session and someone kept saying, we're teaching people soft skills, not hard skills. Hard skills are technical skills, soft skills are these human
Mhm.
skills. And I said to them, I said, baby, there's nothing harder than being a human on this earth. So do not call soft skills what you're talking about soft skills. They're human skills. So technical
Yeah.
skills are human skills. I don't like the soft or hard skills because that
Mhm.
honestly just sets me off. That's one of my pet peeves because as you know, like to be able to navigate the complexity of human emotions and lived experiences and belief systems and values, there is nothing soft about any of that. Am I right?
Amen. I mean, you're so right. And I love that change of language, that nomenclature, because we say soft and it comes across like, oh, it's optional. Oh, maybe if you feel like it. Oh, maybe, I just think there's something the word like soft that doesn't make it as meaningful as human. I love that.
Yeah, So yeah, and I appreciate that because I know that's who you are as well. And so I think it's becoming a little more mainstream than it used to be,
Mhm.
but I felt the same way that you felt. Like I was always put in this box of not only acting like my male counterparts, for me being an African American woman, it was acting like my white male counterparts. And
Mhm.
I'm like, honey,
Yeah.
I will never be a white man. Don't know anything about being a white man. I've known how to navigate situations that have me been in control of a white man, but I can't do that. Right. So I have to show up in
Yeah.
my truest self. And so I'm really curious when you decided that you were like, okay, I need to leave this working in the corporate space to become an entrepreneur. How hard was that to walk away? And what was the hardest part for you to say, I'm gonna bet on myself?
Well, it's such an interesting story, and I promise I'll make it really short. But I started taking coaching classes as a way to figure out what I wanted to do. I thought it would help me be a better boss and that I could use it to then run the department as a next step professionally, and fell in love with it immediately. Like, this is what I want to do. I feel like it changed my soul, changed how I look at the world and how I approach things. So I became very quickly on a path to how do I get out of this job and into doing coaching and into leadership development full time. And the universe really heard me in that, and I had decided I wanted to quit my job by the end of that year, of end
Mm.
of 2017. And I found out in October of 2017 that my job was going to be made redundant at the beginning of
Mm.
2018. So I honestly, like, I waited it out. I got my severance package. I set up my business, did all the things while I was still working full time, and I really almost got, if it sounds negative, but I got walked out the door. I got given the gift of being able to make that decision. Now, that doesn't mean it was easy. I was still
Right.
panicking, and the shift from being in an office every day to working at home by myself to,
Yep.
all the things, like, it was a huge process and a lot of emotions there. But I really was given such a gift to be able to, like, have that choice almost made for me. Like, I put it out there, and it happened.
Yeah. And I love for you that you said, yeah, it made sense for me to do it, but it wasn't exactly easy. And I think a lot of times people say, well, I just want to be my own boss and I'm going to do this thing. And they think it's just like this, wash, rinse, repeat. And I'm like, baby, it's harder than you think. Cause
It
you
was
you
so
out
hard.
here hustling, you hustling for these jobs, man. You hustling for these contracts. And I remember talking to someone, a couple weeks ago, talking about how folks like security. And when they meant security, they meant a constant paycheck that they didn't have to really think about every 2 weeks.
Mm,
And as an entrepreneur, we know that that's not always our reality. It's like we are,
yeah.
as soon as we get one contract, we're immediately going to the next one. We don't even have time to wait to be like, oh, let's celebrate getting this contract. Yeah, we got it. Now what's next? And I think
Yeah.
that's what's so interesting for folks. They do think, oh, I can just be my own boss. You can, and I applaud people who do it, but it's hard out here for a pimp, as they say. It's hard.
It is, and was such a big learning process for me too, and to go through all of the shift in my internal reward system and where I can find energy. So I'm super extroverted, and I needed to be around people, and like how to make all those things and how to make decisions as a business owner, and how to not feel guilty if I'm not working 8 to 5 every day, and like
Yes.
all of these things that went into it. And there's some days that are still really hard, but most days I'm like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. This is why it matters.
Yeah, we love the 8 to 5 gig when you can get it, but boy, as an entrepreneur, it seems like it's more 8 to 8 or 8 to 9, 8 to 10. It's like
Yeah,
you're,
whatever you got to do to make it work.
yeah, and I know we deal with it too. Like having a little bit of time off to ourselves is almost like a guilt that always comes over you. Like, oh well, this needs to be
Mhm.
done, and that needs to be done. That's a whole nother challenge as entrepreneurs for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That realization of if I'm not working, no one is, right? Like, that's a hard
Right.
thing to swallow. But also,
Right.
if I'm not working, then I'm filling myself up in other ways to make sure that the work can be effective too.
Yes. Oh, I love that you said that so much, Tammy, because there is a piece of it, especially I think in this day and age, we're 6 years past COVID and there's so many different things happening, but the whole idea around mental health and rest
Hmm.
and all those things have been such a front page mainstream conversation
Hmm.
where it wasn't before, right? It was like you don't talk about your mental health. You don't talk about needing time off because if you take time off, you already know you're not doing your job and then you're like stressing about it. So it felt like almost like that Sunday scaries that people would have all the time. And if you take PTO, you feel guilty about taking PTO because when you come back, your inbox is dumb. It is so crazy. And so I love that you're talking about this space of redefined, and I love that word so much. And it's for the folks who are listening, it's REDEFY, like defy, redefined. And it's all over your work. It's in your company, it's in your book, it's in your framework. I would love to know some of the origin story around that word, and what does it mean for you at the very core of what you do?
It's funny. I feel like many roads led to that word or that brand or definition or whatever you want to call it. I feel like the framework of me stepping into leadership, what I mentioned to you earlier was, I was told to behave a certain way that didn't match who I was authentically, didn't match who my characteristics and my qualities, right? So I had to break that mold, right? I had to defy what the ordinary, the white male leader. I had to defy that to find my own path and make it work for me. And so, that started at a very young age and has continued in my career, especially starting a leadership development business. When I first started, I was like, I'm only coaching women. I'm only helping women get ahead. I just think women need all the extra help they get, all things. And then I quickly realized, like, until we break the rules and until we break the playbooks down and change the dynamics of how people get ahead, it's not going to matter, right? I can help every woman be more confident and step into something bigger, but she's got to have pathways open for her, be able to create her own, get people out of the way, if you will. So this idea of defiance or boldness or breaking things down has really been a core part of my business, my practice, my own personal leadership path. And I think we all have to really be able to kind of see that, like, I'm not going to be ordinary. I'm going to defy the ordinary and be different. And here's why.
Yeah, and I love that. And in the celebration of being different, right?
Mhm.
It's so funny. Conformity is always one of those things that people say, "Oh, we want you to be different," but they really want you to conform.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
have been an anti-nonconformist for most of my life, which is probably
I've been trying to change that for 20 some
I
years.
know you have, darling, and you have not. And so it's so interesting that we're in that space now, when you talk about being an authentic leader. And I love so much of the work that you talk about is really authenticity. And so I want to break down, just for our listeners, a little bit your framework and your leadership framework around redefined. It has four major pillars, and it's authenticity, it's efficacy, it's influence, and it's inspiration. I would love for you to kind of walk us through how those four connect, and why did you choose that specific order?
Yes, and at the heart of it all, if I could give you a visual, think of two sets of circles. Like, the circle in the very middle of it is that authenticity. And the way I define that is like knowing your strengths, your gifts, your talents, air quote special sauce, if you want to use kind of maybe some cheesier language, right? But this thing that does make you so amazing as who you are, right? To own those things, lean into those things, and really use them to your advantage. What I like to say about authenticity is it's not an excuse to say, I am who I am, take it or leave it. It's, I am who I am. I'm going to use my strengths and grow and develop and make the world a better place around me, right?
Mm,
So it's a nuanced different
mm-hmm,
definition, excuse me.
mm-hmm.
But the idea is like, what works best for me, what brings me to life, and how do I give that gift to the rest of the world around me? So at the center of this platform is authenticity. And then around that are what I call the more pillars of leadership, like things you have to be able to do to check the box to say, like, I am showing up, right? So efficacy is the first one. And this really ultimately is being competent in your role, right? Like doing the things you say you're going to do, showing up on time, answering your emails, like whatever the expectations of the role are. I like to think about it as time management, prioritization, organization. Like, you're focused, you're showing up, all the things are being checked. Yes, good to go, right? So that's like part one.
Mm-hmm.
Part two is influence. And when I think about influence, it's really this idea of helping people have buy-in or feel like they're part of the process, to have the desire to want to move forward alongside of you. And it's not coming in with a sense of authority and power, right? It's getting people to feel bought into, believe in, some energy and excitement, if you will, around the work. And that buy-in is mission critical as a leader. If you get people on board with things, right, like the quality and everything else follows. And then I love to kind of like sprinkle on top of that the last part, which is inspiration. And this is where I think like the mecca of great leadership comes in. Because if I can get you to take action on the initiatives or projects or things that I need you to do, great. But if you're inspired by that, if you connect to the why and know how this is going to help patients or how this is going to help all of our pocketbooks or whatever the why is tied around it, right? Like that's where the energy, the motivation, the pep in the step, the more creativity, innovation, all the things come into play that wouldn't be there without that inspiration. So really, it's it's showing up, it's getting people bought into and understanding the why is really at the heart of all of that.
Yeah, I love that so much, and I love that you kept talking about the why, because I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan, and people who know me and who've
Mhm.
listened to our podcast for a long time, I fangirled over him for many years. I met him in 2019, and it changed my life. It changed my life, as they say. But I believe so much in the fact that people need to understand, why are you asking them to do this thing, right? You
Yes.
you spoke about inspiration, but also there's an engagement factor that is so important. I talk a lot about, people don't want things done to them, they want things done with them. And it
Yep.
feels like to me what you're talking about, particularly with this framework, you're helping people really see themselves in every aspect of the work that they do. And those kind of things are so important for people to really get behind and get in front of, but also to see themselves in that leadership role. And
Yeah.
leadership to me is not a title. And I would beg to say you feel the same way. But
I
leadership
do.
is, we always say, is an inside job. So you can lead yourself and how you think, how you
Mhm.
perform, the mindset,
Yeah.
behavior, actions, outside of even just having a title.
Absolutely. I actually define leadership as the act of moving forward, moving yourself, moving your family, moving your business, moving your initiatives. Like it's forward momentum, and any and everybody can do it. Should you choose to, right? And
Yeah.
I love what you said about self leadership because that has to start there. And I have several next generation leader programs that I lead, and that we always start there, right? Like leading self is first, so you have to be able to check yourself, make sure you're showing up the way that you want to and that you're leading in the way that matters most before you really think about that influence for other people or the organization as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. So as you're doing a lot of coaching, and you coach, sounds like multi-generational, multi-level leaders. Like, what are some of those kind of limiting beliefs you're seeing a lot of leaders that may be carrying it around and don't even sometimes even know they're carrying that around?
I think the biggest one that I see would be no shock to anybody, and that's imposter syndrome. And it shows up not, I think, I assume it's just a women thing. It's not a women thing. Everybody has it. Like we all have this like lack of belief in ourselves and lack of an understanding of what value we actually bring into the equation. And certainly, not everybody can answer that way, but I feel like that's the most common challenge that I see across varying roles, varying genders, whatever the labels are, people really struggle with it. And I think a huge part of that is just that lack of awareness or connection to self and knowing your strengths, knowing your talents, knowing the things that you can bring that nobody else can. And that disconnect happens so frequently because we're looking at definitions on paper. Am I getting this title? Am I making this much money? Am I, having these response, whatever those things are, are we checking the box versus knowing our insides, if you will.
Yeah. And I love that you brought some of those things up, because when we start talking about what does success look like, we all have such varying definitions. I always
Mhm.
tease people about the quote unquote American dream, the marriage, the 2.5 kids, the white picket fence, and the dog, and that was something that was, maybe I would call, the Beaver Cleaver era of the 50s, that people thought was like, that's what I'm going for. But it's so different, I feel like, now, of what people kind of think about or conceptualize of what does success look like. And for you, being who you are, obviously, as an entrepreneur, but also all the different people that you coach, what have you been able to kind of ascertain about success, and how have you helped people kind of decide what success looks like individually for them?
Yeah, but I think exactly what you said. It's asking, what does success mean for you? Not what does it mean for society? What does it mean for your parents or your spouse or whoever's looking on at you? Like, what does it mean for you? And having people really define that and I have them go through a process with leadership development in general is to think about, what does success look like for them as a leader? Like, what are those qualities or those characteristics that they exude? And then how do you build that into your practice every day or into your work every day? So it is literally what you just stated of everybody's answers different, and really having people align not to societal terms of definition, but my terms of definition. And it might be the same, but likely it's probably a little different.
Yeah. And people got to be okay with that, right? You,
Mhm.
you might, what do you call it? You go against the grain and people feel a little like, oh, should I be doing that? You're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You should be doing that.
Yeah. And most people don't want to stand out. They want to blend in, and that's a different strategy for sure. That's not leadership redefined.
Yes, absolutely. And so I want our audience to know that you published a book recently that's exactly what we just been talking about, Leadership Redefined, Define the Ordinary to Unleash Your Potential. And I love that so much. And I as a fellow author, I congratulate you. So congratulations for getting that book out
Thank
into the
you.
world, which is wonderful. But what made you feel like, yes, not only am I doing this coaching practice and I'm doing this work, but I want a book to go with it. So what made you decide I want to be an author, I want to put this book out there? And then what could the book do that a coaching session that you would normally do not, meet that expectation for you?
Yeah, yeah. I had it in my heart that I wanted to write a book for a long time. And I didn't know, this is even before I started my coaching practice. Like there was something about writing that was calling to me. But I had no idea what to write about. I even toyed around with autobiography. I was like, well, who's going to read that? This one. I toyed around with the idea of, I had a boss who used to always say, it's not, it's just business, basically, like separate the emotions from it. And I wanted to really dissect that out and to talk about like why that works and why that doesn't work. But none of those stuck, right? So as I started my coaching practice and started getting into leadership development as a specialty, it became very clear to me that we were doing it wrong as a society. Like we put other people's expectations on individuals and then are surprised when they don't show up exactly the same way. So this became a lot of my thought processy and my talk track, and as I supported individual clients kind of going through their own discovery process of how they want to lead, right? Like the themes kept coming and coming and coming, and so I worked, I put my marketing brain on and kind of figured out how do I talk about this and how do I like characterize the four areas that we've already mentioned. But anyways, long-winded answer to say, like I just really felt called to put pen to paper and give it to as many people who wanted it. Really, I think the idea here is that if we all embrace our authenticity and embrace our strengths and embrace our values and then lean on other people for what we don't have, what an amazing world this would be. It would open doors for so many more people. It would create greater cognitive diversity, greater innovation and creativity, like all the things that come with it. And so if I can inspire one person, then they'll inspire another person and another, and there's a huge ripple effect that goes with it. So I felt very called to get this out the door for people to kind of take that and start to live and believe their own authentic path, if you will.
Yeah, I love that so much. One of the things that just resonated with me so much, what you just said, is around people lean on the pieces that they don't have. And I feel like so much in society, we've been taught to be individualistic in how we think about leadership instead of the collective piece, versus like, we do a lot of things around the personality with strengths finders, Myers-Briggs, and all these things. And where I'm strong, maybe somebody or somebody else is weak in, or where I'm weak, somebody else
Mhm.
is strong. So how can we get more traction and go further together versus just us trying to hold on to our one little
Mhm.
piece of that? And so I
Yeah.
think it's such an interesting concept, especially when you think about not only coaching individuals like you do, but also going into organizations, and not just national, but international. So you are in a global atmosphere right now. I would love to understand, as you have been talking to leaders across the globe, across different industries, like what does that landscape look like for true authentic leadership? And what are some of your thoughts and worries about where we're headed in terms of leadership development?
The interesting thing, I'm going to circle back to answer your full question, but the interesting thing that I find is that companies will offer coaching or leadership training programs or the assessments that you mentioned, like Strengths Finders, which I love, Myers-Briggs DISC, like all these things to learn about ourselves. We like give that to people as a gift, great, but then say, okay, now you know this, but still do it exactly this way. And so we teach people like just to continue to emulate the behaviors of the bosses above us, make decisions in the same way, think about the business in the same way. So we are this world of like I don't know, there's like this weird dichotomy of like, hey, know yourself, but also hide it and act
Mm-hmm.
just like everybody else. And so I
Yes.
think where we really have to kind of challenge this and break this down is that when we do lean into a strengths-based environment of I have this but not that, you have that but not this, like how can we help and support each other, how that changes the entire culture of an organization and the results and the way people work. And like systems today aren't typically set up to allow for that kind of individuality or that strengths-based leadership, because it's like, no, you have to follow the ABC process because everybody has to follow the ABC
Yep.
process, right? So
Yep.
what I see my biggest concerns are as we continue to go down this path of act just like the boss at the top and the rest will follow. Affinity bias, right? We hire people that are just like us. We want to be surrounded by people that are just like us, but yet we know that's not going to lead to the best outcomes. So that's really where I see the biggest challenge and biggest opportunity is like, how do we continue to break down the expectations of everyday status quo to really defying, right? To being different for a reason.
Yeah, I love that so much, and I always tell people like I want you to lean into your superpowers more than ever. And I'm a neurospicy person. I tell people all the time I didn't get diagnosed as a young person. I got diagnosed as an adult. So there were so many things that people told me about myself as a young person, and I'm like, oh man, something's wrong. I'm broken. And now I realize now how much it is
No.
has actually catapulted me to a whole nother level in terms of authentic leadership. And so I love that you are in this space to be able to help people embrace that and not shy away from it. So that's really exciting to me. And I'm grateful that people like you are in those spaces to give people that extra encouragement that's saying, hey, no, you're good. You're okay. You don't have to lead like him. You don't have to lead like her. You have to lead like you. And I think that's super important in this whole world, especially as the younger generation starts to really take hold of what does my
Hmm.
career look like? What does success look like? Am I enough? Because that's always the question. Am I enough?
Hmm. Well, and I'm so excited for this next generation to come into the workforce between the Z's and the alphas and whatever we got going on, because of that strong lean into knowing values. Like they know what's important to them and they're not going to compromise on that. Whereas I don't know that I knew what was important to me, or I've even taken the time to ask the question when I was stepping into the workforce.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. Now, I want to get a little personal as we, start winding down our conversation, if you don't mind. But,
Don't
I know
mind.
you relocated to Columbus to be close to your family. You got two little Frenchies, bulldogs. You are an amateur gardener and a wannabe chef. So I need to know more about that because I was an amateur chef my daggum self. And you also described yourself as an auntie extraordinaire. How does that life outside of work actually help make you better at what you do?
It's kind of what I was saying before about that, like rejuvenation. We need to have a life outside of work, and we need to have a life in work. I don't see them as two separate things, as they're kind of a harmonious blend together. And by doing those things outside of, air quote work, did being an auntie extraordinaire and cooking for friends and hosting parties and all the things that I do, playing with the dogs, right? That just gives me this energy and joy, and it gives me a sense of fulfillment. It allows me to connect with myself, with other people, and get energy in different ways. I also think I learn so much when I'm interacting in other environments too, that is so applicable to the leadership world. Like there's always something to observe, to learn, and to grow. So I'd say the biggest part is like keeping that harmony and balance in my life, but also I have a strong curiosity and desire to keep learning. And so I try to tackle that in and outside of work too.
Yeah. And I love that so much because I think part of that, when you share that with others, it normalizes it for people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of times, everything we've been saying in this whole conversation is like, people are like, am I okay to be like this? And you're like, yeah, you're absolutely okay to be exactly like this because there's not a separation between personal and professional. You are one
Mm-hmm.
human being. You have multifacetedness and you have a lot of complexity in who you are, but you're showing up as yourself every single day, all day. And so you need to be able to embrace that and love that and welcome it in.
And
And
there are days when you're mentally not there, or
yeah,
days when you are, right? Like they
yeah.
just really honoring who you are and what you need in those moments, and not saying rest on your laurels necessarily, but you do need to kind of understand what's going on for you first to be able to show up authentically and to build that internal strength and fortitude.
Yeah, I love that so much. So if someone is listening kind of right now and they feel like they might be playing a smaller version of themselves at work, like what is one thing you would want them to do before the end of this conversation? Like you say, this is something I want you to think about to do today so that it makes your tomorrow even better.
I think the biggest thing I would ask is to think about what does good look like. If you feel like you're playing small, if you feel like you're being limited, if you feel like you're not leaning into your strengths, right? Like what would it look like if you could? What would it look like? What would the dream world look like where you could be able to own and lean into all of those things? And then as you kind of analyze that, like certainly it's not a flip the switch moment, but it is a day to say, all right, what's one little thing I can do differently tomorrow to be 1% better, 1% closer to that goal than I am today? And just break it down into tiny little pieces. But I think you have to have your eyes on what good looks like first.
Yes. Start with the end in mind. I love it. And even 1% is an improvement. So I love that you said that, because sometimes people are like, well, I'm only one step further. That's a step. It's a step.
It's a huge step, right? Because we know, La, like when we talk about just change, sustainable change comes from tiny micro adjustments, not grand sweeping gestures or changing overhauls. Like New Year's resolutions. I'm going to go lose 50 pounds this year, right? Like it's not going to happen, right?
No.
Unless I one day at a time, one little extra step each day.
Yes. I love that so much. Oh my gosh, Tami, I could literally talk to you forever, and it has been so amazing for our listeners to be able to hear you and experience you and just learn how to be their most authentic selves. So I would ask, if people want to find you, work with you, and also get your book, how can they do all of those things?
Well, find us online, weinspirewe.com or leadershipredefined.com. We'll answer all of your questions. I'd love to meet you.
Love that so much. Tami, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. And thank you for your lived experience, because I know I have had the privilege of being able to work with you. So I just know how amazing you are. And now our listeners get to feel that as well. So thank you for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. And Brian, how can people get in touch with us if they'd like to connect?
You can email us at embwpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to follow us on Insta and Facebook, we'd appreciate that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening. We appreciate you all so much. Thank you for your time, and I hope you go out and be your most authentic selves. We'll see you soon. Bye.
See you.